Hello, and welcome to the Paul Green Comedy PaulCast. This is for July 7th, 2024, episode 221. Is that right? I think it is. All right, everybody. So, yesterday, July 7th, I had a phenomenal day. Let's start from the beginning. So I had an opportunity to once again reprise my role as popular YouTube children's sensation Blippi. That's right, everybody. I got to play Blippi for yet another 2-year-old. I cannot tell you how many times I've had to play Blippi for a 2-year-old. Matter of fact, I can tell you exactly how many times. It has been twice. 3 times, technically, because I played Blippi twice for 1 2-year-old. On 2 separate occasions. That's right. Playing Blippi once for a 2-year-old was not sufficient. I had to play him twice. And, it's I don't know. What do I even make of this? It's just a very interesting thing. It's not necessarily something that I'm, enjoying doing, but I don't know. There's an element of... There really is an element of acting in it, and it's acting in a situation that... it's very unique. It's like I have to be entertaining to 2-year-olds. And I remember some comic or reading somewhere that being able to entertain children is I don't know, a sign of something. That was very vague. I don't even know why I brought that up. But other than that, it's just kind of fun to get out of the house and to also provide a service to people. And I've realized that I've become a lot less altruistic in the last couple of years. I think primarily because I was raised in such a strict religious tradition, which constantly made me feel guilty for not being more altruistic. That any time I ever behaved in any manner that was even remotely self-serving, it was just because I was some sort of selfish, godless man who needed to repent or whatever. And so I feel like I've sort of overcompensated and went, the other direction, just said, well, I'm only going to be self-serving and I am going to look after myself first. And inasmuch as me looking out for myself also happens to be of mutual benefit to somebody else, well, then it's a win-win. And I know that I'm never behaving in a manner to intentionally harm or take or whatever, treat anybody with any sort of negativity. I'm just going to show up as best as I can in whatever manner is most serving to me. And it's really interesting as I've been doing these kids parties, and I've just started doing them. There is an element of service to it, which is something I didn't really anticipate, and it's something that I haven't necessarily been seeking out over the last couple of years. So I don't know what to make of that. It's just my observation, because doing these parties for kids isn't necessarily what gets me out of bed in the morning, except when it has to get me out of bed in the morning because I have a 2-year-old's birthday party to get to by 10:30 a.m. on a Sunday. And while I'm there, I'm just going, okay, this is cool. I'm here. I'm hanging out. I'm just interacting with kids and having fun. And I get to, make these kids' days, although most of them are probably too young to remember it anyway. I get to make the parents look like heroes for hiring a character actor to come out and entertain their little kids. And I don't know. It's weird. I feel like, you want to know what? I'm being of service here because I feel like they want me here. It's not that I don't want to be there. I'm not like, oh, this is the worst. But it's definitely not, my, like, that's not the most fun thing for me to do in terms of a performer. There are lots of other types of artistic outlets that I enjoy more. But most of the time, like if I wasn't at that party this morning, I just would have been sleeping, right? So it's not like I'm necessarily sacrificing other opportunities. It's, hey, I have an opportunity to go make some kids' days and to make a birthday special and to make parents feel like heroes for putting so much thought and effort into making their kid's birthday party a special day. So I'm just been wrapping my head around that about maybe I'm sort of coming back to center in terms of my internal moral compass and my feelings towards altruism. I think I was just so traumatized by the concept of altruism. And plus, I think there's another element of that, which is just having enough experiences with people who seem to tout their own altruism, so much so that it starts to become apparent that, oh, they're masking something else. If somebody has to pretend to be that benevolent into all things, they're probably overcompensating for something. I mean, how many nonprofit leaders, CEOs and whatever of these nonprofit do-gooder organizations need to be exposed for, fraud and all this stuff before you go like, maybe somebody constantly touting altruism might just not be what it seems to be. And again, I don't like to be this cynical. I'm not a super cynical person, but I do try to be pragmatic. And I also just try to be as honest and transparent with my intentions and what I think and feel, and and when I'm behaving in a manner that is true to my intentions, or when I'm perhaps behaving a little too benevolent or a little too charitable when maybe there's strings attached and all that stuff. And I've tried to be very careful the older I get to not be that way, and just to be as transparent and just transparent with who I am and what I'm up to. And if I'm going to show up in a capacity which would be deemed charitable, that I'm doing so without some sort of hidden agenda or strings attached. And I don't know, I just felt a little bit of that today, which is weird. It's like, yeah, well, you're getting paid to show up as Blippi. It's like, yeah, but I don't really need the money, and I'm not doing it for the money. And then I had to ask myself, well, if I'm not doing it for the money, and it's not necessarily something that I'm seeking out or that I'm excited to like get up and go do this thing, then I had to really look at my motivations and go, well, then why? And there was just an element of, because you're a talented performer, and there's a company that needs talented male actors to dress up in costumes and go entertain kids for their birthdays to make their day. And it doesn't always have to be all about you, Paul. So that's been some good inner dialogue. And I think the counterbalance of that is, and maybe the reason I am realizing that this is a bit of an adjustment for me, is because I think I was so far in this mindset of I constantly have to be in a state of self-sacrificing almost to the point to where anything that actually is beneficial to me is somehow wrong. Like even looking out for my own best interests is indication of some sort of, sinful, horrific behavior. And I definitely don't agree with that. But does that mean that every single thing that I do needs to be all about me all the time? And no, it doesn't. It doesn't need to be. So, little life lessons there while I was dancing around with a 2-year-old in a kitchen this morning, dressed up in orange suspenders and a bow tie. So, fun time. So, I did a little blippy action there, and then I went home, and I got to tell you something. I was just absolutely floored, exhausted. I had barely gotten any sleep like 2 nights in a row, and I've had these really big comedy shows that I was headlining. And Saturday night, I was already running on fumes. The show went incredible, but I'm going, I don't want to run on fumes 2 nights in a row. I want to try to get ahead of my sleep. And so I got home from Blippy, and I just zonked out. And I had some work stuff to do, so I wasn't able to sleep right away. But I got a few more hours of sleep in, which was much needed and very nice. And after that, I then headed out. Headed out? Is that a word? Headed? I headed out? Why does that sound weird? Hey, grammar police, if you're listening, why does headed out sound weird? Is that wrong? I then did head out. Is that one of those things to where you can't lead the preposition with the adverb when it's a Thursday or when the moon is in second equinox of Mercury's rising on the moon sign of Gemini's whatever grammar rule. But I went out to Glendale, Arizona to Stir Crazy Comedy Club, where I was headlining again. And oh man, just had the best time. It was such a fun show. And I did mostly the same routine that I've been doing, that I've been working on. However, I felt so comfortable with the crowd, I actually took a couple risks. Calculated risks, and I tried some new material. Which rule of thumb is don't ever do that when you are headlining in front of a paid audience. Figure out your stuff beforehand. But I felt pretty strongly about the new material. I'd already sort of worked it out in my head, and one of the bits I had done at an open mic once. And it didn't get a great response, but it was also because when I did it at the open mic, I hadn't really wrote it down and really fleshed it out. And it's a very short bit. It's probably a minute long, minute and a half, maybe. And I don't know. I just the material itself was also fairly low risk, so I didn't. It's not like I was talking about something that was kind of out of left field or would require the audience to really stretch to come along with me. And so I just went, I think I can try this bit tonight. And I stuck it in the middle of my set when things were already going really well. The audience was already with me. They already trusted me. So I gave it a try, and it went pretty well. I haven't listened to the tape yet. So I'll have to see if it still came out as good as maybe I thought it did, or if there's maybe a couple things that after listening to it I go, oh, actually that didn't land as solid as I thought it would, and then I can start the refining and rewriting process. And I'll tell you, the amount of rewrites and refining that goes into any given stand-up comedy bit is just there's just so much. Matter of fact, when I got home tonight, I had a bunch of footage that I needed to upload to a Google Drive for my social media manager to start working on cutting up for my social media, obviously. And so when I saw the footage, I watched some of the the footage of the routines that I had done a couple weeks ago. This is just literally like 2 weeks ago. And it's funny because I was watching it and I realized that on one of the sets, I had tried a new joke that didn't quite land, and that I had already rewritten that joke a couple times. And I actually did that same joke tonight with a new punchline that did land. And I don't know. It was just gratifying to just see that progress, to go like, oh yeah, that I tried that joke for the first time 2 weeks ago and it didn't actually work all that well. As a matter of fact, in the video, I called it out because the audience didn't really it's like I could tell they were with me. They liked the premise. They liked where I was going with it, but they didn't like how it ended. They didn't actually like my final joke on it. And so I was like, all right, duly noted. I need to just rewrite the ending. And I did, and it's much funnier now. So, just a really great day. Playing a little Blippy, and then getting to headline a comedy show in Glendale. And it just reminds me about, well, I've done this a handful of times. Because, I got way into that whole, the secret manifestation stuff there for a while. And I'm not totally opposed to it. I have my hesitations and objections to just about anything. But I still will, from time to time, write down goals or ambitions or, visualizing my day. If I had on my dreams, what would my day look like? And I remember doing that once, probably 3 or 4 years ago, or it could have been 5 or 6 years by now, for all I know. But I remember writing down that, I was going to wake up in the morning, and then I was going to have a film shoot to go to, or I was going to have some sort of acting thing to go to. And then after the acting thing, I would be headlining a show that night. And it just occurred to me, oh yeah, I woke up in the morning, I had this acting thing, and then I had a headline a show that night. And I've actually had that experience more than once now, to where, I'll have a commercial film shoot or something, and then a comedy show in the night. And it's just really cool to be living the dream. So with that, I have also been reading The 48 Laws of Power and giving my critique. So far, I haven't liked it. However, today's chapter that I'll be talking about is actually a chapter that, at least in premise, I agree with, which was, I think the wording was always say less than you need to. Something like that. Always say, yeah, I'm not sure that's the exact wording, but that's the idea, is saying less than is necessary. And there is something to that as a stand-up comedian. Now, I find it very ironic that I'm saying say less than you need to, although I do a daily podcast where all I do is talk about myself. However, as a stand-up comedian, there is such a thing as word economy, and it is something that I pay a lot of attention to, because an audience really only has so much tolerance for a stand-up comedian to get to something that is funny. And one of the cardinal sins that you can commit as a comedian is to stand up on stage and ramble on. Little Led Zeppelin plug there. And ramble on for, a minute or two without saying something funny. And while you're up there talking, the audience is just going, when do you say the thing that I'm supposed to laugh at? And I spend a lot of time on word economy when I'm writing out my material. And, I'll write my premise, I'll write my joke, I'll write my opinions, I'll write all that stuff. But then when I go back and refine it, I will go, what is the quickest way that I can say all of this, but still have the same impact? What words are absolutely necessary, and what words can I get rid of? One brief example of that is I'm doing this joke right now where I talk about Tinder and how men don't read Tinder profiles. And my second joke was, I don't think that desperate men are on Tinder so that they can spend Friday night reading nonfiction or something like that. And it just felt a little long. And so I went back and I just went, what's the quickest way I can say this? Do I need the word the? Do I just need all of these extra words? And ultimately, I pared it down to just say, I don't think desperate men. So instead of saying, I don't think the desperate men on Tinder, I said, I don't think desperate men are on Tinder to enjoy nonfiction. As opposed to, I don't think the desperate men on Tinder are looking to spend Friday night reading nonfiction. Right? That was the first draft. I don't think the desperate men are on Tinder to spend Friday night reading nonfiction. And now it says, I don't think desperate men are on Tinder to enjoy nonfiction. Right? The exact same concept, the exact same thought, but just pared down to almost half the length. But it gets the same impact and gets to the joke much faster. So, 48 Laws of Power, I do agree that there is benefit sometimes to reducing your words, although I don't actually think that's at all the type of implication and interpretation that the book gives. Anyway, I'm just trying to read this book and I'm trying to get as much out of it. And I've decided, though, if I disagree with the law of power, instead of just saying why I disagree with it, I am going to do my best to come up with my own substitute law of power, which I feel would be a better way to live life. So that's going to be a tall order. All right, everybody. That is all for today for the Paul Green Comedy PaulCast for July 7, 2024, episode 221. I hope all your dreams are coming true. You're out there hustling. You're out there having fulfilling experiences and that you are finding joy in your life. I love you all so much. Thank you for listening, and I will talk to you tomorrow.